Parents, you're hurting your children every day. You may not be doing it consciously, but you are. How? Well, stay tuned, because if you want the best for your kids, then you don't want to miss this one. You may think your child is tuned out to what you say, listen to, or do just because they're playing video games, watching TV, or doing some other activity. But guess what? They're very much tuned in to everything you say, and especially everything you do. You see, most adults don't think kids listen to them at all, and the consequences of your actions could be devastating. When you think about the things that you say, listen to, or have on the TV, one thing is for sure. If your children are around, they are paying attention and absorbing everything. During COVID, we saw on TV more times than not how anxiety, pressure, domestic violence, depression were all on the rise, along with other mental health issues. And why was this? Because parents were stressed out. Parents were tuned into the television ultimately with their kids in the house and them being tuned in to their parents. And if you think that that is not the case, well, then I agree to disagree. Because let me tell you something, if you were having family dinners, talking about the situation from a positive mental attitude, then children would not be taking on that stress and anxiety themselves. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand that during that situation or any other moment in life, when parents are stressed out, they're trying to figure out how they're going to feed their family. Maybe they lost their job. Perhaps they suffer themselves from anxiety and depression. Those things are real. But what happens when we show those feelings and we voice those feelings in front of our children? They ultimately take it on themselves. A perfect example right now that I've never seen before in my whole life, in the over 20 years that I have been a teacher and in the education system, is the opinion of elementary school children, even secondary school children, on political standpoint. Democrat, Republican, liberal, left, right, it is insane. Because really, what do most people, young people, know about this topic? Most of them only know what they've heard on TV, what their parents have told them, or they're talking about at home, what their teachers are talking about, and it is 100% out of control in my personal opinion. In putting this pressure on young people to have political opinions at such a young age is something that even for themselves, they don't quite understand. And maybe some parents do sit down and explain it to them. However, the majority are not. When you hear a young person making fun of Joe Biden and that he doesn't know anything, or a young person saying derogatory comments about Trump or this politician or that politician, where are they getting this from, right? Because it's not coming up on their own. And at the end of the day, what do they really have to do with it? Unless you're actually sitting down and having intelligent conversations with them, you are creating a divide for your children in school, because ultimately they're going to protect the opinions of their parents. And why should that be on their shoulders? On the other side, you have those parents that are constantly stressed out and not managing their own mental health in the right way. Children know these things. They sense these things. They overhear your conversations. I actually had a parent whose child knew when something was going on at home, because they would come to school constantly acting out, and they were talking freely about the fact that they didn't have the money to pay for different things. And ultimately, the child was then feeling responsible for the fact that their parents had to spend money on him, and he felt guilty, and that his parents couldn't get what they needed because they needed to take care of him. Not the conversations to be having in front of your children or on the phone when you think they're not listening. Another comment as well is saying you should appreciate what I do for you. Guilt factor? You're lucky You have what you have. Guilt? You have to do this because I said so. Control? You're the adult. You are the example. You are setting that example for your children. So ask yourself, is what I portray to my children what I would want another adult to be showing them as well? If you're telling your kids to not use their cell phones at the dinner table, for example, but you're there on your cell phone 24/7, not leading by example. And telling them that you're the adult and you can is not going to get you a whole lot of respect. When parents realize that having positive conversations with their children are ultimately going to lead to better results and more healthy children or healthier children who have a positive mental attitude, who are strong, who believe in themselves, they can only do this by being that example, by showing through their actions, not their words, what they want their child to be or do. I don't know how many times I have kids say to me that they're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something else to that aspect. And when I ask them why, it's because that's what their parents told them that they were going to be. I have one young girl, she's 15, she's brilliant in technology. She can create, invent things that I can't even explain, but her parents want her to be a doctor. And out of respect for them, she doesn't want to go against what they say. You might say, well, maybe she shouldn't listen to them. It's not for me to judge. But what I did tell her was that maybe you should be having these conversations with your parents to show them why or how she could go into biotech or a field that has to do with medicine and then still be in the technology part of it because she really and truly is brilliant in that. You see, children want to make their parents proud of them. Children want their parents' attention. Whether they do it in a positive or a negative way depends on the child. Another way parents hurt their children is by being too overprotective, coddling them, not allowing them to stand on their own 2 feet. I used to see parents wheeling their kids' backpacks into school for them when they were in 5th and 6th grade. Why is that okay? If they're just helping them out once, then that's one thing. But every day, where is the responsibility? What are we teaching our children, and how are we teaching them to be independent? How are we teaching them to be curious and good thinkers? And I love the story that Naveen Jain tells about what children do or want to be. Ultimately, it's what their parents would like them to be. Have a listen.
Is the parents themselves acting as an example of living the life that they are preaching, because what happens is many of us preach something to our children and then we go out and do something different and hoping that children listen to what we say. However, the children are a lot smarter than that. They watch you do things. They don't care what you say to them. And when a lot of the people, when they have a semi-success in their financial side, they say, I want to sit at home now and spend time with our children. That seems like a good goal, and it's a noble cause in their mind to spend time with their children. Now imagine what the children see. Children see that I go to school at 7:30 a.m. My dad is sitting on the sofa watching CNBC. I come home from school, my dad is sitting on the sofa watching CNBC, and the dad says, son, you need to work really, really hard. Hard work is what it takes to be successful. Go out and do more work. And he's sitting on the sofa watching CNBC. Guess what? Then instead, what if you say I want our children to focus on doing good for humanity, because we know if the children can stay focused on what can they do to improve the lives of people around them, whether it is thousands or millions of them, if they focus on that, not only they contribute to the society, they can also create an amazingly great enterprise or a career as an entrepreneur. But most of the parents are so they're so risk averse that they don't want to do the same thing that they preach their children to do, right? And that is one of the problems.
What are you showing your children? What example are you setting forth? Another great example is how many parents say, oh, I need work-life balance. Being separate from work, right? We hear that all the time, work-life balance. But we don't incorporate our children in what we do, helping them understand what is the budget? How do we have what we have? How much money comes in? What costs have to go out? What expenses do we have that you don't just get to go play soccer for free or other things? Incorporating your kids in those activities is reality. It's important. Another thing that Naveen Jain would often talk about was when he was starting up his company. If he had a dinner meeting, a board meeting, whatever it was, he'd bring his kids with him. Obviously, he did something right because now 2 of his children have started their own companies, and the 3rd one is on his way. You see, the more you show your kids, the more you expose them to life experiences, positive life experiences, the more they will achieve, the greater they will be, and the more grateful they will become. And also, it's time that you get to spend with them. You may not agree. You may not think that. You may think I'm oversimplifying. But ultimately, in the end, it's about what are you doing in front of your children? What are you saying? What are you listening to? And how is that affecting your mind? How do you feel? Because ultimately, if you are feeling sad, or if you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you're feeling anxiety or depression, or most likely other things around you, you're feeling it too. So it's time to change that inner monologue. It's time to change what you're listening to. It's time to limit what you're exposing your children to if it's negative. It's time to turn off the news because it's toxic for young people to listen to. And it's time to start feeding them with positive affirmations, healthy content that will motivate them and want them to achieve more, be more, and have a great life. So, like I said in the beginning, you're hurting your children. It's not conscious. You're not doing it on purpose. But the next time you say something, ask yourself, is it critical? Is it positive? Is it something that my children should hear? Next time you have the TV on, what are you watching? What are you hearing? Next time you're listening to the radio, a podcast, looking at social media, what is it? What example are you setting for them that they can achieve anything? Be happy, be healthy, have a positive mental attitude? Or are you showing them that life is hard, it's difficult, you have to struggle, it's not fair, it's negative. Everywhere there's anger, anxiety. Both exist. It depends on which of those you want your children to consume. Because one will lift them up and build them up along with yourself, and the other one will hurt them.
Considering a homeschool program for your children? Visit MaggioVirtualAcademy.com. Listen, learn, and take action with our weekly podcast, The Secret to Success Isn't So Secret.
And get your copy today of Follows and Likes, Is This All That I'm Worth?